Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Today we're going to be going through a new dream from Dana Coverstone. He calls it the Towers, Chains, and Trains Dream. The Towers, Chains, and Trains Dream. Now, seems like, and this is actually quite common, as a person starts getting closer to the Lord, many times the communications to them also gets more complicated. And this one is one that's complicated. And so if we're going to understand this one, I'm probably going to have to take the whole program to do so. And I'm also going to have to go back and repeat several things in order for us to get it. In other words, if I just read through it, you're going to scratch your head and say, what? Matter of fact, you might say that even, even after we go through it a couple of times. But I believe I have understanding to it. The dream began with a large auction on the field where the Washington Senators play. There was no one in the stands, and the lights were off in the stadium. The auctioneer was masked and wearing a judge's robe, and those about to participate were of all nationalities and wore the corresponding flag of their nation on their jackets. Now, I believe that this is the Asian nations that are vying for who's going to get what property once America falls. And it may be a future tense as if America has fallen. I'll read that again. The auctioneer was masked. To me, that means when you wear a mask that you believe the news, you believe the Moloch and Baal worshippers, you believe that the whole V thing out there is true, and you're afraid of getting the V, so you wear a mask. The auctioneer was masked, so I believe that's saying that he is part of the conspiracy, the deep state, and wearing a judge's robe. So that means he is in charge of the divide up of the property of the United States. And those about to participate were of all nationalities. All of the world wants to get in the dividing up of the spoil of America, and wore a corresponding flag of their nation on their jackets. Each was also wearing a night vision headset, and they had their jackets up around their necks. In other words, they're trying to do this in secret. I want to believe that this is them planning on the split up or the breakup of America and who is going to get what. I don't want to believe that this is a future tense after America has fallen. It seemed to be an attempt to shield their identity, even though the stadium was empty and dark. As the auction started, several of the Asian nations, now, hang on, you remember Dmitri was told the fall of America would start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists, and that's probably when the military goes in with tanks and takes over Washington, D.C. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. In other words, many of them will not like the fact that DJT is now back in charge and will fight viciously against it. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and two other countries will attack and defeat America in 1 day, 1 hour, so great riches will come to naught. Now, here's the point. Then God will raise up China and Japan and many of the nations. Well, what is China and Japan? Those are the Asian nations. So when it says, as the auction started, several of the Asian nations, so these are the nations that believe that they are in a position to rule over America. And, of course, if we have hundreds of massive, powerful nuclear weapons from the Russians land all over America, we would be devastated. And this may very well be a picture of them dividing up what is left. As the auction started, several of the Asian nations gathered together and talked among themselves, and they held up a card with a strange symbol on it. Now, I've got a picture of that symbol, and I've emailed Dana about it, and in my opinion, the symbol is Tubal Cain. And, of course, back in Genesis, it says Tubal Cain with a skilled artificer in all forms of brass and iron. And there are those people that believe that he was one of the Nephilim, that he was half God, half man, or what some people say, is it would be half man, half cow, as in Moloch and Baal worship. So essentially it's saying we've got a group of Asian nations that are having a meeting, working together to divide up America. As the auction started, several of the Asian nations gathered together and talked among themselves, then held up a card with a strange symbol on it and got the attention of the auctioneer. It was declared that the auction was over, and a large briefcase was handed to the auctioneer, probably a payoff. He accepted the briefcase, shook the hands of 12 different men, snapped his fingers, and yelled out the word, "Now." All right. So what we have is the Asian nations having a meeting, planning on dividing up America. I was then watching a hurricane-like storm. I can tell you right up front, I believe that this is the financial storm that is about to hit America. A hurricane-like storm that grew in great strength, and it flowed from Indonesia. Now, why Indonesia? I think it's very interesting. I just got an email the other day that sent me to a guy that showed all of these earthquakes, and they're all earthquakes at exactly the same depth, and he was showing that a very large underground facility where these Moloch and Baal worshippers do all their dastardly deeds is located near, that's right, Indonesia. So when it says a storm came from Indonesia, it's basically a storm of financial problems coming from the Moloch and Baal worshippers, the deep state, the Khazarian mafia, the international bankers, whatever you want to call them. It rumbled and spread all the way across the Pacific Ocean and became green as it hit the west coast shoreline of the west coast of the United States. Then the storm became a huge blanket of rain that covered every state as it moved east, and it kept churning all the way across the nation. The rain resulted in torrential flooding, means great financial problems are heading this way. Torrential flooding that began to wash away the interstate system, and the asphalt seemed to melt, meaning that it's going to be a really bad financial storm. When the storm got to Washington, D.C., it became a tornado that drilled into the ground of the city. Then suddenly the rain stopped and the sun came out, meaning that when this financial problem goes all the way across America and does a lot of damage, when it gets to Washington, D.C., it destroys a lot of the evil there. Now let's go on. The tails of hundreds, maybe even thousands of snakes disappeared into the hole in the ground, and the earth began to fill the hole in the ground on its own. So there's a financial difficulty coming from Indonesia, in other words, up through the Moloch and Baal worshippers, that'll go across the Pacific Ocean, hit the west coast, but it won't stop until it goes all the way to Washington, D.C. And a lot of snakes get buried as a result of that. Now, I want to believe that that's positive. Then I saw that America had dried up, but the interstate system was now replaced with dirt roads, probably saying that we're talking about a time when America is no longer able to drive cars, and that may be because the EMP pulse has knocked out a lot of the car computer chips and things like that. But I also saw that the ground level skin of the surface of the east coast seemed to be curling and rolling up and trying to pull towards the west coast, like, parenthesis, the metal lid of a sardine can. Now, I believe what it's saying here is that so this big financial problem came from the Moloch and Baal worshippers, up out of the ground, up out of Indonesia, rolled from the west coast over to the east coast, but got buried in Washington, D.C. Of course, that's the big problem. Then the surface of the skin rolled back from the east coast back across to the west coast. That's where we are right now. Then I began to see what was under. Now, here's a very big part. Then I began to see what was under the dirt roads, and it appeared to be a train or a monorail system that was driven by tracks hanging from the ceiling of the underground. Now, what is that? Those are your, I don't know another way to say it, deep underground places where the cows hide. If I say the exact words, then the filters will catch it, okay? It's where the Moloch and Baal worshippers have their tunnel systems that circle the earth, many of them very, very deep, and a lot of this is where things like time travel and all of your cloning and all of your high technology and their evil that they're getting from other dimensions is being used against us. This is evil of the highest order. These are people that are probably in daily contact, literally, with Lucifer and his angels directly. Now, let me go back. Then I begin to see what was under the dirt roads. In other words, so Dana is actually seeing all of these underground facilities where these people do their evil under the dirt roads, and it appeared to be like a train or a monorail system that was driven by tracks hanging from the ceiling in the underground. The engines appeared to be very large, a very long unit, and it was pulling an even longer single-unit vehicle that was pulling a very large chain connected to a flexible, tied together. Okay, here's a simple way of thinking about this. In other words, it's basically an underground monorail system that is moving from a rail hanging from the ceiling. In other words, not balanced on something from below. If you think about it, hanging from the ceiling would actually be more efficient. And of course, whatever their mode of travel is probably not electrical and certainly not some kind of crude oil based thing, but it's a long chain of these semi-trailers. So he's actually being shown what the Moloch and Baal worshippers are doing in their underground caverns. The chain was attached to roots of the east coast, and they pulled the coast, began to curl, and headed west. All it's saying is that they are doing things underneath the surface that is trying to destroy our nation. And really, whether it's come from East Coast or West Coast is not entirely important, but just to understand, this is the Moloch and the Baal worshippers. These are the people that we need to pray against when we come into the Solemn September Assembly, September 6 to 8. You get signed up at watchmanstrumpet.com. We need to pray against them. The chain was attached to roots on the east coast, and as they pulled, the coast began to curl and headed west. I realized that there were hundreds of these trains, with chains pulling the nation toward the west. The activity on the surface went on as most seemed to not notice what was happening below the surface. Most people don't know these things that are going on in the underground. And so they were simply rolled up into a curl as it impacted them. As the trains pulled west, there were towers. Oh, this is important. There were towers going up that looked like prison guard towers over the area where the nation was curling up and then being planted like seed corn all over the United States. Pause a second. What we really have is a picture of America having fallen, where the Asian nations come in and want to divide up the spoil. There's a financial storm that starts from the underground. After there's a great devastation, then there comes a time where there's prison guard towers. Of course, that's the mark of the beast. No one can buy or sell save he had the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. So we understand that's coming. That's all part of the tribulation. So much of this is a picture, hopefully, in a distant future, several years. I'd like to think many years, but I'm probably sad to say only a few years into the near future. Prison guard towers over the area where the nation was curling up and then being planted like seed corn all over the United States. The red soil was muddy and stretched across the face of the entire country. Probably is talking about blood in the soil. Where the capitals had been, there were now towers with bright flashing yellow and blue lights. Where Washington stood, the Capitol building and the White House had a fence all around it that appeared to be about 50 foot high with razor wire attached top to bottom, meaning nobody is getting in or past this razor wire fence. I also saw that in the towers were bags of white and yellow fleas, or at least bugs that appear to be fleas, and as the ground rolled toward the west, the bags were emptied around the towers and the insects began spreading through the region. Meaning that there's going to be all kinds of... Insects normally represent sin that has just destroyed the nation. And right now we see sin all over, like Chicago. We hear all of these deaths, these murders taking place, people getting beaten up and accosted just right on the street. It's like all of our safety is gone. All of this defund the police. And this is saying Or really, it's showing a picture in the tribulation when no man can work, when there's prison guard towers all across America. And basically, all of America is a prison camp. That's the interpretation of what it's showing. And then the fleas are further problems all across the land. The train chains continued to pull until the surface level of the nation popped off and the skin flew up towards the sun. Just like Icarus. Icarus is a Greek myth, the son of Daedalus, if I'm saying that right, but who cares, with whom he escaped from Crete, flying with wings made of wax and feathers. Heedless of his father's warning, he flew too near the sun, causing the wax to melt, and fell into the Aegean Sea and drowned. Okay, so who cares? The point is that it destroyed itself. Let me read that again. So the train chains continued to pull until the surface level of the nation popped off and the skin flew up towards the sun. Just like Icarus, as it flew higher and higher towards the sun, the skin began to burn on both coasts and faded away. Then I saw the chains continue to stretch over the Pacific and were moving in that direction, pulled by the chains moving on the ocean floor. So it's saying that these evil Moloch and Baal worshippers underneath the surface of the earth are doing a lot of damage, and it doesn't sound like they're going away anytime soon. Essentially, that's what it's saying. They began to pull the nation like a wagon west, and it was being dragged toward the Far East nations. So we're going to see a lot of influence from the Asian nations in the future. The man I see so often, this is the angel that appears to him, appeared in the middle of the empty baseball stadium and spoke very softly and said, now, this is the point. This is the part that we all need to listen to so carefully. Don't worry about the red dragon, as the red dragon has worse enemies than it knows. And the spirit of Antichrist walks the earth and whispers in the ears of the kings at the moment. He is tempting their pride, taunting their power, and they are laying the tracks for the train of deception. So the train above it's a physical thing. I think it's physical, but I think it's also a train of deception. So there's a lot of deception going on right now. For the train of deception to pull the world into its grip, meaning that we're getting very close to the start of the tribulation. Look up, for your redemption draws near. But warn the shallow fervently that deep roots are needed now more than ever. Brace, endure, prepare and use the time you have to reach the rootless ones. I'll read it again. Don't worry about the red dragon. He's saying that the Asian nations are going to have a lot of plots and plans against America. But we're not to worry. That's not the problem. Don't worry about the red dragon, as the red dragon has worse enemies than it knows. And the spirit of Antichrist walks the earth and whispers in the ears of the kings at the moment. He is tempting their pride, taunting their power, and they are laying the tracks for the train of deception to pull the world into his grip, meaning the Antichrist is nearing the time when he will come upon the earth. Remember, Revelation 6:1 tells us when the tribulation starts. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. I want to believe that we all get to hear that. And by the way, there is a very good possibility that this could be the year that the tribulation will start. Now, I don't know. And matter of fact, I don't know anybody that has been told that this is the year. However, I do know that it will start on some future Feast of Trumpets, which is another reason why we're having our Solemn September Assembly on September 6 to 8, because September 6 at sundown is the start of the Feast of Trumpets. You want to go to watchmanstrumpet.com to get signed up. Let me read it again. Don't worry about the red dragon. So don't worry about the Asian nations, what they're doing, what they're planning. Don't worry about the red dragon, as the red dragon has worse enemies than it knows. And the spirit of Antichrist walks the earth and whispers in the ears of the kings at the moment. He is tempting their pride, taunting their power, and they are laying the tracks for the train of deception to pull the world into his grip. Here's the way we'd say that. The Antichrist is laying the plans and the plots to suck the world into a 7-year tribulation. It is near, even at the door. It's about ready to start. Now let me continue. Look up, for your redemption draws near. but warn the shallow fervently that deep roots are needed now more than ever. Brace, endure, prepare and use the time you have to reach the rootless ones. It's sad that so many people don't want to know about the last days. It's sad that so many pastors don't want to read about Revelation. They don't want to know anything about this stuff. And consequently, they are going to be slapped in the face with a very wet washcloth, and it's going to be a rude awakening, sad to say. In substance, what this is really saying is that the Asian nations have a plot and a plan to take over America and to divide up the spoil. And there's going to be a great storm, and I think it's not only a financial storm, but it's great difficulty, that the Moloch and the Baal worshippers coming out of and organized by those underground facilities that they have. Thousands and thousands of miles of all of these underground tunnels and underground facilities where all of these evil things are done. And after the devil has had his way for a while, there's going to be prison guard towers springing up all over America. Sad to say, but there's a great test. And no, there's not going to be a pre-trib, mid-trib, pre-wrath rapture. No one is going to escape the test. But those people that do endure to the end shall be saved. Now, that does not necessarily mean their book name is in the book of life, but they are allowed to live up to another 1,000 years. Again, that's the nations. However, our objective here is not to necessarily live to the very last day that Jesus returns. At least my objective is to win as many souls as I possibly can. So yes, there is going to be a time after a lot of trouble that there's going to be prison guard towers springing up all over America, and it's probably not going to be the good guys in charge. Where capitals had been, there were towers, and 50-foot high razor wire all around Washington and the capitals. But the angel is saying, don't worry about the red dragon. Don't worry about the Asian nations. They have big enemies. Really, what you need to worry about is the spirit of the Antichrist. That's what he's really saying. He walks the earth even now. He's planning and plotting to come into the world for the last 7 years. And by the way, when he is released, right now he is not on the earth. I need to also correct that. Right now, the Antichrist is falling endlessly and helplessly in the bottomless pit. This is talking about the two witnesses. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them. Now, the point being, right now the beast, or the Antichrist, is falling endlessly and helplessly in the bottomless pit. But he is released on the first trumpet of the Feast of Trumpets, which is Revelation 6:1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder. That's when he's released into the earth. And then Daniel 7 says he overcomes 3 of the 10 regional rulers in his rise to power. He will be the 8th after he overcomes the other 3. And that's how we'll be able to spot him. But it's not until about the middle of the tribulation that he actually is in total power. So once he gets here, immediately there is war. That's what he does. Immediately he starts war. Now, in case you're wondering, why in the world would he have this Solemn September Assembly on a Monday evening and then all day Tuesday and then end Wednesday evening? Why would you do that when everybody has to work? Don't you know that, Stan? Because it has nothing to do with convenience. It has to do with the Feast of Trumpets. Let me refresh your memory. Perhaps some of you remember one black cow and one white cow was born on September 24th of 2014. Which is the Feast of Trumpets. I believe it's a prophecy. If it is a prophecy, what's it saying? The black and white cow with a 7, and it's a perfect typewriter 7, on his forehead would be saying 7 years of plenty, because September 24th of 2014 is a Shemitah, or 7. In other words, like we say a couple is 2 or a dozen is 12, a Shemitah is 7. So it's born specifically on the start of a Jewish 7-year period, September 24th, 2014 Feast of Trumpets. So if it's a black and white cow, that would be saying that it's 7 years of plenty. Black, some blessed, white, some not blessed. 7 on the forehead says 7 years. The same day, a solid red cow with a scribbled 7 on his forehead was also born. Now, if your books are in the red, in that the cow was red, that would be saying 7 years of famine. And since it's just a scribbled 7 instead of a perfect typewriter 7, it would be saying 7 bad years or 7 years of famine. So in that it started specifically on the Feast of Trumpets, September 24th of 2014, it is saying, in my opinion, that there are 7 good years or 7 years of plenty starting on September 24th, followed by 7 famine years, which may be the 7-year tribulation. If it is, that would be starting September 6th at sundown 2021. Now, I'm not saying that the tribulation is going to start sundown September 6th, 2021. But I am saying that the prophecy, if this is a prophecy, and I personally believe that it is, that would mean that 7 years of famine starts September 6th. Now, in that, we believe that DJT is about to do something really, really big and come back into power. In that, we believe that massive arrests is about to take place. In that, Dimitri Duduman was told that the fall of America would start with an internal revolution, and I personally believe that a bunch of tanks rolling into Washington, D.C. and taking over Washington, D.C. is the fulfillment of that prophecy. It may very well be that this coming September 6th through 8th, specifically September 6th, the start of the Solemn September Assembly, the start of when people are going to gather for 48 hours of fasting and prayer to save America, and that's what it is. It's to save America. It could very well be at least the start of 7 years of famine, and it could possibly, I didn't say it was, but it could possibly be the start of the tribulation. Now, sometimes I can think that it is possibly that soon, the start of the tribulation. Other times I can think, no, we got a lot of years yet. I honestly don't know, but I can tell you that the prophecy of the 2 cows says 7 years of plenty started September 24, 2014, and 7 years of famine start September 6, 2021. I can tell you that that is with the 2 cows, the black and white cow and the red cow. That is what the prophecy is saying, which is another reason why you want to go to watchmanstrumpet.com. Get signed up. We only have about 75 people signed up, and that's nowhere close to as many people as we need praying for our nation. Gather under one name, Jesus, to do one thing, pray for America. Watchmanstrumpet.com. Watchmanstrumpet.com. When a nuclear device goes off, it produces an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, and it fries every computer chip unless they're protected. The good news is EMPShield.com has devices a military testing facility says are 100% accurate to protect against EMP, solar flares, lightning, power surges backed by a 10-year warranty and a $25,000 insurance policy. And they come with simple installation instructions for home, vehicles, RV, and electric generators. You can have electricity in a blackout. EMPShield.com. Use the promo code PROPHECY for a $50 gift card. This helps Prophecy Club. That's EMPShield.com. Promo code PROPHECY for a $50 gift card. EMPShield.com. EMPShield.com. Heaven's Harvest has food in stock. The coveted freeze-dried food in stock at heavensharvest.com. And if you put the promo code in STAN, it helps your Prophecy Club, and it also gets you a packet of heirloom seeds free. heavensharvest.com. Promo code STAN, S-T-A-N. heavensharvest.com, STAN. If you're really looking for the truth about the rapture, I honestly believe you will find it in this book. The truth is the Holy Spirit knows the truth about the rapture. And one of the reasons that the people other than post-trib can't seem to find peace about this is because the Holy Spirit is trying to tell them that they don't have the truth. That is, until they find post-trib. But either way, this is going to help you to find the peace about the rapture. I really recommend you get it. We offer them in shrink-wrap sets of 10. 1 for $20, 10 for $30, and 20 for $50 at prophecyclub.com.